Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
As the climate continues to warm, we will see events like this increasingly frequently.
While we were out, historic, disruptive, and deadly record heat waves strike both Europe and the U.S. Extreme heat intensifies major wildfires across Greece, Portugal, and Colorado. Plus, the Trump Department of Energy deletes all web pages focused on energy efficiency.
Because, of course, they do. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics analysis, and snarky comment.
London isn't just calling, it's cooking.
London broil. Sounds delicious. This is your Green News Report.
We ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay, Desi Doyen, it was a hot holiday week, not only here in the U.S., but, well, elsewhere around the world, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. While we were out, record-shattering heat waves struck both the U.S. and Europe. Now, in the U.S., more than half of all U.S. residents were under extreme heat alerts over the 4th of July weekend, forcing the cancellation of numerous Independence Day events. The extreme heat and sweltering humidity caused the death of at least 28 people. Electricity prices in the central and eastern U.S. surged as the heat strained the national grid. More than 600,000 Americans lost power at one point in the dangerous heat, and the extreme heat is hitting as the World Cup enters its critical knockout rounds.
And this heat wasn't just bad, it's been staying bad for quite a few days in a row.
Yes, it's very persistent. In Europe, the nearly simultaneous historic heat wave in late June is now officially the continent's most severe heat wave on record. Germany, Hungary, Czechia, Poland, and Denmark set new all-time national heat records. Officials estimate more than 20,000 excess heat deaths across Europe.
20,000?
Yes. Train tracks buckled, roads melted, electric grids, hospitals, and mortuaries overwhelmed. Europe is the fastest warming continent, and this latest heat wave exposed weaknesses in the continent's infrastructure and buildings that were designed for a climate that no longer exists.
Among them, the fact that they don't have air conditioning in many homes, which, ironically, were they to get it, would only make the burning of fossil fuels causing all of this even worse.
Yep, until everyone is able to switch over completely to renewable electricity. Another heat wave is now on tap for Europe, the third since May. On DW News, Dr. Liz Bentley of the European Meteorological Society warned,
it's not only becoming the new norm, it's actually going to continue to get more extreme beyond this. We're not just seeing them as kind of every decade or so, we're seeing them every year, typically temperatures being broken. And that's going to become an annual event. And even if you go forward a few decades, we'll look back to the summer of 2026 and say, oh, that's quite a cool summer compared to what we get now.
If only someone had been trying to warn people twice a week for 6 minutes for about 18 years.
The relentless heat also intensified major fires in Greece, Portugal, Spain, and France. In the western U.S., the heat triggered more than 36 major wildfires, including a massive fire on the Colorado-Utah border that has killed 3 firefighters and burned nearly 50 square miles. And yes, it is climate change, driven by the burning of fossil fuels. Scientists at World Weather Attribution announced that the intensity and long duration of the combined heat and humidity of both the U.S. and the European heat waves would have been, quote, virtually impossible without the effects of fossil fuel pollution. Impossible before humans began warming the planet. A troubling pattern has also emerged this summer. All-time heat records are being broken with unusually large margins over previous records. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani called on residents to set their thermostats to 78 degrees, as recommended for years by the U.S. Department of Energy. But immediately afterward, the Trump Energy Department deleted more than 6,000 government web pages with tips for energy saving, according to the Internet Archive.
Wow.
And finally, some better news down under. Beginning July 1st, Australians across most of their country now receive 3 free hours of electricity every afternoon.
Huh.
It's part of a new initiative that utilizes excess solar energy generated during peak sunlight hours. And again, completely free.
Because they have so much solar, they don't know what to do with it.
Yep.
For much more on all of these stories and the many we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Remember, you can download our reports and stream them anytime via Pandora, TuneIn, Apple, Amazon, and iHeart Podcasts. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the social medias, especially Blue Sky at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Man, it's a Friday show. By the way, got to get this off the top, and I'll try to remember it in the middle of the show, but we have to be off Monday. I did warn everybody that July was going to get dicey for a little bit, and we pushed right through the year, taking very little time off up to July. I told you this is why, and we're going to keep doing shows as much as we can through July, but there's going to be a couple days, some small stretches here or there through this month that are unavoidable, and then we'll be back on it straight through to the end of the year, but Monday's going to be one of those days unavoidable. I do apologize, so I'm going to go hard today. Into the weekend. We have been focusing a lot on Trump's financial disclosures, the Iran conflict, a little bit of NATO. But today we have to turn our attention to something that is reaching critical mass. When we began talking about the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, when we began talking about NSPM 7, we said this is going to be a huge threat to our freedoms, to justice, to democracy, the Constitution. It's not getting the press and the pub that it should at all. And it is reaching absolute critical mass. And the aspirations of Trump, but more importantly, Stephen Miller, they are coming to fruition right now. And this administration is doing everything it can to become more and more authoritarian, grant its agencies more and more power to violate your rights, not only to satiate the disgusting, rabid 33% of his base that is wholeheartedly racist and xenophobic and bigoted. It's not just to that end. Of course, the only people they hate more than brown people are left-wing radicals, Democrats, Democrats. They consider us to be hated just as much as minorities, which they've for generations hated. Their hate for Democrats has swelled and been focused. The president feeds into it. We are as tribal as we have ever been. Not just throughout the country, in neighborhoods and cities, but in Congress. This is the environment that Trump was trying to foster that allows him to maintain power, violently oppress deport, harass, detain, but also to influence our elections based upon these racist, xenophobic, bigoted lines, weaponizing our agencies, weaponizing our counterterrorism apparatus. It's all culminating. It's all coming to a head. There was a new ICE killing. 52-year-old Mexican national Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. Lorenzo was a husband, a father of 3. He'd been living in the U.S. for 35 years undocumented and was literally weeks away from getting his work permit. He ran a business in Texas. He's a construction business owner in Texas. He was stopped in Houston. 6:50 in the morning, on his way to work, he was stopped. He was consequently shot in the abdomen and died later in the hospital. He was shot by ICE. He was shot by ICE in coordination with an overzealous local law enforcement working in lockstep. The local law enforcement is as culpable here as ICE. Now, this stop was an attempt to get their hands on another gentleman, a Guatemalan national. They pulled over the wrong guy, a van full of the wrong people, based on information given to them by a local fusion center in Houston, Texas, ran by the local law enforcement. They claimed they shot him because, and you're going to recognize this, this is going to sound familiar, he was shot because he tried to weaponize his van to run over an agent, and the agent fired in self-defense. That's what they say. We do not have video of the agent firing upon Mr. Araujo. We do have video of him dying as they surround him with their guns outside the vehicle. His family and everybody at the scene dispute the account of the ICE agent. They say that's not how it went down. It's not how it went down. He was simply picking up people to take him to the construction site. He was pulled over because they were looking for a Guatemalan national. The local law enforcement said, yeah, there's a van of brown people that was just sighted driving down this particular street. Why don't you check them to see if your Guatemalan national's in that van? That's how this went down. So ICE took the tip from local law enforcement and stopped the van and shot Mr. Araujo. Shot him. Killed him. This is the climate that is being fostered by the NSPM 7. Okay? The aggression, not just from CBP and ICE, but local law enforcement. They've also been recently joined by Joint Terrorism Task Forces on some of these stops, raids, detainment efforts. Why the Terrorism Task Force? Man, more and more the Terrorism Task Force is involved in these incidents. More and more people are getting killed. Over the last year, federal agents have fired on 21 people, 5 deaths, 3 American citizens, another one in Texas. You know the Renee Nicole Good, that was in Minneapolis. They said she tried to run over an officer. We saw the video. She absolutely did not. You had Ray Martinez in Texas, American citizen. They said he tried to run him over with the car. They killed him. And you know Alex Preddy, that was Minneapolis as well. This excuse of they tried to run us over, this is their MO. This is their new standard operating procedure. Should you feel the need to shoot someone and murder them during a detainment effort, just get in front of their car and say they tried to hit you. you'll get away with it. This is all happening while Mark Wayne Mullen promises a quieter enforcement strategy with Christine Oman Bovino out, Mullen in, head of DHS. It's been quite the opposite. It's been quite the opposite. When all you have is a hammer, everything and everyone is a nail. Why am I bringing up this shooting of an undocumented immigrant when I'm talking about NSPM 7 and local law enforcement and this new environment? Local law enforcement have what's called fusion centers. Fusion centers. Fusion centers were created after 9/11. And what they do is they coordinate between FBI and local law enforcement on terrorist threats. On terrorist threats. Now, Antifa protesters, anti-ICE protesters, and the immigrants themselves are all being seen as terrorist threats. These fusion centers are taking a larger role. They are overzealously and aggressively going after not just immigrants at a local level, but protesters actively. And when I say actively, I mean actively. When NSPM 7 came down, these fusion centers across the country, they decided to pick up the ball and run with it. Okay? And their tactics are despicable. Their framing is despicable. It is discriminatory. And it is ending up with people dead. It is ending up with people dead, with their rights violated, but it's going to go much farther than that. But these fusion centers, like the ones that pointed out Mr. Arulo to the FBI and ICE agents, these fusion centers, let's just take a look at one fusion center and what's happening at a local law enforcement level. Right here, Southeast Florida, Miami-Dade. They have a fusion center. And just recently, they released a bulletin that was acquired by The Intercept. A bulletin. This bulletin that the Fusion Center released amongst its staff and other fusion centers being shared all over the nation, it's taking its research and its cues from right-wing social media, Jack Prosabic, right-wing outlets, local right-wing outlets. They are taking their narrative, right-wing media outlets, social media, small media outlets, and running with their narrative and spreading it to their officers and spreading it around the country. And other fusion centers nationally are doing the same. I want to give you some excerpts from the Miami-Dade Fusion Center bulletin that was intercepted by The Intercept. Decentralized autonomous network of cells that stand against capitalism and want to overthrow governments. They feel they are oppressive through violence and silence their opposition by any means necessary. This is describing Antifa specifically. Antifa. Antifa has been very active. Their most prevalent presence during the George Floyd riots and recently during the anti-ICE protests. These fusion centers, normally, their focus, prior to the NSPM 7, their focus was on international rings of ATM card skimming scams, like where you put your ATM card through a gas station, they get your number, then they go fraudulently rack up charges on your account. That was a lot of their focus. Sometimes they would focus on foreign periodicals or media, pieces of media outlet excerpts in foreign countries that make their way to the States that could have a terrorist leaning. Like recently, there was a magazine out of the Arabian Peninsula called Inspire about Al-Qaeda. That got flagged. Stuff like that. Stuff the Fusion Center should be looking at. That's what they used to do. Not anymore. Not anymore. Now, in this bulletin, I want you to listen to a list of First Amendment protected activities that our local law enforcement is seeing as Antifa tactics. And that's what they're calling them. Antifa terrorist tactics. Listen, profane language against law enforcement, doxing, zines. And I'll tell you what a zine is. A zine is like it's a small magazine, privately published and put out, with Antifa rhetoric and talking points, pointing out, ICE presence and injustices, violations. It's small. It's usually personally published. They are being framed, these little zines, as aggressive terrorist Antifa tactics, so much so that in another case, one person who had put out one of these zines that was linked to a anti-ICE protest got 30 years in prison due to the violence that unfolded at that detention center. 30 years for simply this person wasn't even at the protest, for simply putting out one of these zines describing the event, the protest. 30 years. Continuing. These zines are used as educational tools and offered as propaganda to recruit new sympathizers. Police should be this is in the Miami-Dade Fusion Center bulletin that they spread to all of their officers. Listen to this. Police should be on the lookout for inflatable animal costumes. This is a form of propaganda implemented by Antifa to soften their image and change the narrative that they are violent domestic terrorist organizations. It's a reference to the Portland Frog. They're literally putting that piece of propaganda in there to reference the Portland Frog inflatable costume that became a social media viral meme. Yes, if you go outside in an inflatable costume in Miami-Dade, you will be zip-tied with a hood over your head and thrown in the back of a van. They're telling you they're going to do it. Telling you. They're not stopping there. Not stopping there. They are also targeting the National Lawyers Guild, and this is important because their whole goal here is to try to identify all of the aspects of this very real organization. The truth is Antifa is a political movement. It is, in actuality, decentralized. It does not have a centralized administration, a form of funding, hierarchy, roll count, none of that. It is a movement against fascism. You'd think American democracy-loving patriots would love this movement. No, they are the number one target of the right. Why would that be? Continuing. This effort against the National Lawyers Guild is a very specific move to centralize that which is decentralized. If we can identify the actors, identify the pay system, Soros, and identify those who are defending them, well, we have just centralized our target. Now they are very real and can be added to a domestic terrorist list. Rather than this nebulous group of people who come and go, that claim to be anti-fascist. No, now we've got a target, a very clear target. One of those targets is the National Lawyers Guild. Now, the National Lawyers Guild was a legal collective founded right around 1937 because the American Bar Association did not include black members at the time. The National Lawyers Guild stepped up, and they were a colorblind lawyers guild. They have taken hits over the years. They were targeted by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. They were targeted by McCarthy's Senate hearings. They've been targeted because of their left-leaning views and inclusivity. Go figure. Now they are the obsession of the right-wing think tanks and social media outlets. So taking these right-wing social media, creators and heavyweights, taking their narrative, taking their playbook, they have implemented it into this bulletin given out to their officers. Targeting the National Lawyers Guild. The National Lawyers Guild has been seen observing protests, observing police activities, and defending those who have been detained or arrested by ICE or other federal agents in conjunction with a protest or immigration policy. That's what they do. They have to go down. They are a clear target. They are a clear threat. They clearly need to be recognized by the NSPM7 and our fusion centers nationally. Obviously, how dare they observe police and agent activity for legality? How dare they defend those who need defense? That's a threat.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things.
Remember the promises? No more wars. Release the Epstein files. Lower gas prices. Cut inflation. Drain the swamp. How's it going? Another foreign war costing us billions. Not one Epstein prosecution. Gas headed to record highs. Inflation skyrocketing. Drain the swamp became corrupt insider trading. Billionaire surrounded by billionaires. They don't stand at the gas pump watching it gut their paycheck. They don't care how much groceries cost. They don't worry about making rent, making payroll, or making it to the next paycheck. They think they can get away with it. They think you won't remember what they promised. Politicians don't stop breaking promises when they fail. They stop when their failure costs them something. What do we know? They'll keep doing it if we keep voting for them. Had enough?
You did everything right. You worked hard. You played by the rules. You bought a house, raised your kids, paid your taxes. You were told that made you middle class. That made you safe. Nobody told you they were going to change the rules. Your grocery bill is up $400 a year. Because of tariffs they told you other countries would pay. They lied. You pay more at the pump while we spend billions on a foreign war they promised would never happen. Your parents are on Medicaid. They worked 40 years for that coverage. Republicans cut their benefits while passing tax cuts for billionaires. You can't afford to get sick. Prescription drug prices keep going up. But Republicans are building a billion-dollar ballroom for parties you'll never be invited to. They don't care. The majority of Republicans in Congress are millionaires. Many are multimillionaires. Some are worth more than $100 million. A government of millionaires making decisions for people like us who aren't and never will be. They think there's nothing we can do. Had enough?
Now back to Brett Breaks Things, smashing spin, silencing the noise, and keeping it all facts. No fluff.
Our local law enforcement targeting the National Lawyers Guild. Our local law enforcement targeting First Amendment protected activities like swearing at police officers, wearing inflatable costumes, putting out periodicals. Our local law enforcement, in lockstep with NSPM 7, is targeting First Amendment protected activities and targeting the lawyers groups that are going to defend these people. Our local law enforcement. We have to see this for exactly what it is. They are targeting First Amendment protected activities. They are relying on partisan right-wing social media outlets to identify who needs to be targeted. They are using fusion centers. Fusion centers are local law enforcement based on these right-wing social media intelligence reports. Right-wing intelligence. What an oxymoron. They are using these reports to target aesthetics, speech, ideology, organization of protests. Brett, how does this relate to Lorenzo Araujo's shooting? It is directly tied because the MO is exactly the same. The MO is the same. These local law enforcement apparatus are overzealously trying to facilitate ICE's job. They are identifying brown people for our ICE agents to go shoot incorrectly. Not even the right van, not the right people. They are using the same excuses and tactics to justify the shooting. They tried to run us over with their car. They tried to run us over. And just like ICE, local law enforcement is not going to investigate whether Mr. Araujo was murdered. They are going to investigate and prove that he attempted to murder the officer, just like Renee Nicole Good, just like Mr. Martinez. Harmeet Dillon, the head of our civil rights division within the DOJ, when Renee Nicole Good was killed, said, "I'm not investigating that." First time in decades, our civil rights division declined to investigate the killing of a U.S. citizen by one of our federal agents. And then she did it again when Alex Preddy was murdered. We're not investigating that. There was an ICE investigation in both cases to prove that the shooting was justified, but no investigation from our civil rights division to prove that Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good were murdered. Not interested. Same thing here with Mr. Lorenzo Araujo. ICE has declined to investigate, and the FBI is looking into and investigating and collecting evidence that Mr. Araujo tried to murder that officer. They are not trying to find whether that officer committed murder. Same MO, same defense, same justification, same tactics across the board, whether it's ICE, CBP, DHS, FBI, or your local law enforcement. That is a police state. That is 1984. That is authoritarianism. If you are brown, or someone who defends those who are brown on any level, you are now a domestic terrorist. NSPM 7. You are a domestic terrorist. They're not just using, by the way, overwhelming force and violating your constitutional rights. They're also using the ridiculous backing of Congress financially. What do I mean by that? The unbelievably inflated, overblown budget for DHS and ICE. Now that is coming around and being weaponized. They will weaponize every aspect. Every tool they have at their disposal will be weaponized, including the ridiculous amount of funding Congress has afforded them. What do I mean? What do I mean? So it's not just overwhelming force. It's not just violating your Constitution or surveilling you. What else are they doing? There was a raid. There was a DHS raid, FBI DHS coordinated raid on June 29th of this year. They went to a home, no knock, armored vehicles, kicked in the door, threw in flashbangs. This happened in Texas. The target was a transgender left-wing activist who goes by the name Doberman on social media. Doberman is a member of the Community Liberation Brigade. The Community Liberation Brigade. What are they? Okay. The Community Liberation Brigade, they participate and provide security for ICE protests. They participate in and provide security for ICE protests. What do? First, no weapons. They are not armed, nor have they been accused once of causing bodily harm to an officer or another citizen. That you need to understand. 2, they act as a buffer between federal law enforcement agents and protesters who might be more vulnerable during high-tension situations. They will get in between non-violently and try to protect with their bodies, try to protect more vulnerable protesters as ICE agents or other federal agents get more and more aggressive. What else do? They form cohesive and organized protest parameters. They try to create a barrier to keep a protest localized, cohesive, doesn't let it get out of control, doesn't let it spread. Why? Because when it spreads, they can't do their next function, which is observe federal agents, observe their actions, track their actions, and try to alert any protest groups, hey, there's more agents coming down this way, or there's more armored agents coming from there. We've got armored cars coming in from here. Be careful. They try to keep these protests nice and tight, nice and organized, non-violent, so they can identify any threats being posed by federal agents. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's what Doberman did. She was identified as one of the leaders. Now, she was detained in her underwear. She was not charged with any crime, and her cell phone was seized. Okay. The federal warrant that they were serving was tied to an investigation into the bomb and drone attack plot on June 14th concerning the UFC event at the White House. That's right. They were trying to tie her to the dozens of people that were connected to this plot, 5 of them arrested. They were trying to tie her to it. Why her? This was completely weaponized, completely tribal bullcrap. You see, Doberman has been the target of right-wing local outlets in the area, especially the Dallas Express. They've seen her as one of the leaders of this organization, the Community Liberation Brigade. They saw her as one of the leaders, so they focused their ire on her. And they convinced local law enforcement that she was definitely tied to that terrorist plot and other Antifa terrorist plots across the country with no evidence. And I mean none. They simply took the word of the Dallas Express and busted in her door. That's why her. So, they took her cell phone, and a few days later, an anonymous FBI agent went back to her house and offered her $200,000 to be a confidential informant. The agent tried to cajole her and convince her, said, hey, we already did digging into your finances because you're a terrorist. We already went digging through all your finances and your work history. We know you have financial struggles. Here's your debts. Look at this. You owe this and this and this. It's crazy. You're in debt. After this little meeting, Doberman told them, I'm not interested. Get the bleep out. That's right. Dangled $200,000 in Doberman's face, in this activist's face, and she told them to get out. Not interested. Stop calling. I hope she asked him to replace the door as well. But this is bad. This is crazy. This is so antithetical to keeping the peace and preventing violence and extremism. Why do I say that? This is just one example that we heard of. This is just one example. $200,000 to this Doberman. This is just one example. How many other people are they offering $200,000 to become a confidential informant to flip on other Antifa members? First, the DHS and ICE budget is completely out of control if they're able to offer one informant $200,000. Completely out of control. This is our cash that they dangled in front of this woman to turn over all of her friends and confidants and associates over to ICE and DHS so they can paint them as terrorists and throw them in jail for maybe 30 years. Who knows? But even more, in a more detrimental light, think about all the violence and extremism that might be provoked by this. Think about people who would be convinced that they have to take this money and I need this $200,000. Now I have to go manufacture a situation so I can point to these extremists and collect my cash. How many of these people are going to try to manufacture a situation, provoke a situation, a scenario where they could cash in? A scenario that would not have existed because the whole thing was manufactured and fabricated and bullcrap based on Dallas Express confidential information. Doberman was not involved in any plots. Doberman was not involved in any terrorist schemes. She was not connected to any violent extremism. But how many people, given the opportunity to collect $200,000, who also aren't already involved in extremism, will manufacture extremism to cash out? Not only are they not stopping violence and extremism, they are facilitating it. They are provoking it. And they're doing it with our cash. They're doing it with our money. So, we've talked about the effort out of the White House, NSPM 7. Anybody who has an ideological difference to this administration, we're talking anti-Christian, LGBTQ, any anti-government sentiment in any way, anti-American, actually in NSPM 7, anti-American, they all go on our domestic terrorist list. A list that you can't see. You may be on it. I certainly may be on it, but I don't get to see it. The effort out of local law enforcement, totally in lockstep through their fusion centers with violating constitutional rights, violating amendments, rights granted to us from the First Amendment, targeting huge swaths of their population and using the powers afforded to them as law enforcement officials to do it. What else? The next what else will absolutely blow your mind. And this one is from the State Department.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break.
China. They've been taking our jobs for decades. Millions of jobs lost to unfair trade and cheap labor, crushing American workers. Elon Musk made $178 billion last year. His largest factory is in China. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, made over $100 million last year. iPhones are made in China with cheap labor. These companies made billions in profits exploiting American workers. Who's going to speak up for the American worker? Nobody. Donald Trump and the Republicans don't care about us. They're cutting deals with China and laughing at us. More AI to kill our jobs? They love it. They get richer. We get screwed. It's wrong. But until we stop them, it will only get worse. Had enough?
and pay your taxes. You play by the rules. Donald Trump and the Republicans think you are stupid, a patsy. They think they can do anything they want with your tax dollars. The Trump Justice Department just announced that $1.7 billion of your tax dollars will go to a secret list of Trump supporters. $1.7 billion. Who are the lucky Trump corruption lotto winners? A secret list picked by 5 members of a secret commission appointed by Trump's criminal defense lawyer. On January 6th, did you storm the Capitol and attack police officers? Did you try to help Trump steal the election in 2020? Move to the top of the list. It's crazy and corrupt. Why are Trump and the Republicans doing this? Because they think you're stupid and don't care. You work hard and play by the rules. Had enough?
The average American spent $4,200 more last year just keeping up with inflation. What did Donald Trump do? He made it worse. Much worse. Donald Trump's cabinet has a combined net worth of over $700 billion. His own family is making billions. They don't buy gas like us. They don't buy groceries. They don't check airline prices. They have their own planes. Donald Trump's private war is killing us. He doesn't care. Nobody around him cares. They live in a different world. Must be nice. They think we're stupid, and we'll keep voting to keep them in power. What do you think? Had enough?
Brett breaks things, fighting for America one mic drop at a time.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody again, we will not be here Monday again. I do apologize. This is why we pushed so hard into July, is because we knew there was going to be some dates in July, and one of them has popped up Monday. We cannot avoid it. So, I'm going hard into the weekend, and then we'll be back Tuesday, but I did want to remind you of that once again, and I do apologize. After July, we're going to go hard again. Just like we did coming into the year, we're going to go out of the year really, really hard, pushing as many shows as humanly possible. And we appreciate all of your support, every bit of your support, showing up every day as many of you do. And the financial support, donating is so critical. And some of you, man, you just step up every time and you make this possible. You make this possible. If you do want to donate, go to brettbreaksthings.com. You can just hit the donate button. Thank you for all of that. Now, so, we're highlighting what local law enforcement's doing. We know what the administration's doing. We know the NSPM 7 is now driving administration policy and bringing together multiple agencies to weaponize themselves against brown people and those who should defend them. The next effort I'm going to describe to you, and I need you to stay with me because this is Stephen Miller's ball game. This is the culmination of Stephen Miller's efforts, not just throughout this second administration, but for years now. For years now. This is what he's been pushing for. He is right at the doorstep, but there, thank God, are impediments to his efforts. What am I talking about? They have taken great pains. They have gone to great lengths to prove that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. They are on the NSPM 7's domestic terrorist list, and they are trying to centralize that which is decentralized. They're trying to paint a target on specific backs to say this is an organization. It is a domestic terrorist organization. They're violent. They're anti-government, anti-Christian, pro-LGBTQ, pro-immigrants. They're a threat to America. But they're not just a domestic terrorist organization. This administration is hell-bent, Stephen Miller is hell-bent on proving and legitimizing the idea that Antifa is a foreign terrorist organization. This will be the ball game should this succeed. Why is this any different than a domestic terrorist organization? There are a number of differences. Specifically, our counterterrorism tools we allow our agencies to use. Okay. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has invited senior ministers from more than 60 countries to Washington next week for a summit. This summit that they have invited these countries to it surrounds one topic: the resurgence of transnational far-left terrorism. Get your mind around it. Transnational far-left terrorism. That is what this summit will be about. They are trying to establish an international framework that would allow U.S. law enforcement to use counterterrorism tactics and tools against Antifa. But, I mean, it will be everybody. This is Stephen Miller's ballgame, okay? If domestic groups like Antifa are labeled a foreign terrorist organization, this will unlock aggressive investigative capabilities, enhanced surveillance tactics, and intelligence sharing, and penalties. Let's be real clear. If this is successful, anyone, and I mean anyone, in any way associated with any protester or someone who sympathizes with anti-ICE organizations, protests, movements, they will be subject to a whole new array of consequences. And I mean anyone. Like, you're the girlfriend of a guy who is roommates with someone who writes a periodical about ICE activity. Or you're the girlfriend of a gentleman who has been to a number of ICE protests that got violent in some way. Or you're her parents. It's endless. First, anyone involved with Antifa activity or anti-ICE protests in any way, even all you have to do is know that someone you're close to is involved in Antifa. All you have to do is know this. And you provide anything: services, travel, advice, lodging, a meal. You are providing these services to a foreign terrorist organization. What is the penalty for that? Up to 20 years in prison. That's the slap on the wrist. If they want to throw the book at you and can link you in any way to any violence, it could be life. Think about what I'm talking about here. Someone you know, maybe you went to school with them. They were at a protest that got violent. You then, a week later, let them sleep on your couch. They can prosecute you. They can prosecute you for providing lodging to a foreign terrorist organization. Also, if you are in any way associated with anyone in Antifa, or God forbid, in a self-avowed person who, prescribes to that ideology, if you see yourself as Antifa, and they can prove it or not, you could have your assets froze. You could have surveillance of your financial services. Banks and financial institutions can close your accounts or block transactions because they don't want to be even loosely associated to anyone who's providing funding to a foreign terrorist organization. They can, if you're brown and from another country, regardless of your status, they can cancel visas, work permits, student permits, asylum applicants. All of you, if you are in any way associated, even loosely, to Antifa, you can be deported immediately. Do not stop go. Do not stop. Do not pass. What is it? Do not pass go. Do not. I forgot what it is now. I'm in my own head. I haven't played Monopoly in way too long, by the way. I keep bugging people in my life to play Monopoly with me. And I think I know why. Because when I start to play Monopoly and it gets bogged down and we start accusing each other of cheating and the banker's not banking right, somebody flips over the board. Has anybody in our audience ever finished a game of Monopoly? I defy you to tell me you have. I digress. Immediate deportation. If you are in any way loosely associated with Antifa, immediate deportation. And now you will be subject to FISA surveillance and warrants and searches. FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and that will allow them, if you are even loosely associated to Antifa, that will allow them to monitor your phone calls and your emails, everything you put on social media, all of it. Secret little warrants. Right away. This is Stephen Miller's endgame. Should this attempt to create an international framework establishing that Antifa is a foreign terrorist organization. This is the fallout I am describing. This is what they want to do. This is Stephen Miller's endgame, a complete police state. Now, scheduled for July 16th, this ministerial event hosting 60 plus ministers of foreign countries. It's a July 16th date. And it's facing a little pushback. Thank God. Right now, there's pushback. First of all, our own intelligence agencies and analysts, up till now, and still for now, they flatly refuse to brief on Antifa at national security meetings concerning foreign threats. They are being pressured, cajoled, squeezed, bullied. You need to start mentioning Antifa when you go to national security briefings talking about foreign threats. You need to start bringing up Antifa. We need to establish funding lines, support personnel from foreign countries to Antifa here in the States. Get it done. Up till now, they won't do it. We'll see how long that lasts. But up till now, they won't do it. As far as these other countries go, this is the best part. They are not subject to Don's bullying and threats and a weaponized FBI, DOJ, CIA, NSA. They are not susceptible to this. And they're talking about it. You can tell by the things they're saying. Because the vast majority of these nations have expressed confusion, dismay, and flatly are refusing to show up. What are some of these other nations saying? One European diplomat said they were unsure why they were even invited. We don't have Antifa in our country. Another one said, it's another diplomat. I don't think we can find any reason why we would be interested in attending such an event as this. Another diplomat. 3 separate European diplomats. Another one. Our law enforcement authorities have not focused on left-wing terrorism because this is not considered a high priority threat in our country. The Europeans are much more concerned about right-wing terrorism than left-wing terrorism. And that may be the most hypocritical aspect of all of this, the most despicable tribal aspect of all of this. While they are trying to paint First Amendment protected activities here in the States as Antifa terrorist tactics, they never, ever, ever in NSPM 7 or anywhere else mention neo-Nazi white nationalist groups at all. Not targeted, not identifying their, characteristics, who they may be, the groups that may be defending them. Nope. We let them march through our capital on July 4th. Not a peep. Not a peep. Not mentioned on NSPM 7. Allowed to march all over our country. You say you're not racist, Don, but the racists, they know you're racist. You're their guy. And you prove it time and time again. Yeah, the European nations are saying, no, it's not the left wing, it's the right wing. It's the right wing all across Europe that is a threat, a terrorist threat to the populations of these nations. Now, 60 plus countries have been invited. But Marco Rubio and his State Department, they primed this event. Now, they tried this twice before. Mini events that absolutely nobody attended, and those who did said it was an absolute joke. Holding little international powwows, trying to convince the international community that Antifa is an international threat. A couple other attempts have failed. This is their biggest effort. And what they do to prime the pump on this? They designated 4 European far-left groups as foreign terrorist organizations. They've identified 4. Of the 60 nations, they've identified 4 total organizations that they feel confident saying these are foreign terrorist organizations linked to Antifa. They mentioned Antifa Ost in Germany. Antifa Ost is the name of the German Antifa wing, plus 2 groups in Greece and 1 in Italy. And they are trying desperately to establish a foreign tie to these groups. If they can establish a foreign tie with the help of these European governments, if they can establish a tie between these 4 organizations in Europe and Antifa here in the States, then they can say Antifa is a foreign terrorist organization and let all of these tactics begin. But as far as these 4 groups are concerned, some of these people spoke about this as well. The designation of these 4 groups by our government has met with skepticism across the board, especially in Europe. One terrorism expert said it's kind of peculiar them mentioning these 4. These groups have carried out acts of vandalism. They've harmed individuals in the past, but they don't have one casualty to their name. All 4 groups, no casualties. And authorities in Germany also responded to the mentioning of Antifa Ost. Authorities in Germany have said this. The security authorities' assessment is that the potential threat posed by the group has recently decreased significantly. They noted that Antifa Ost leaders, and particularly violent members, were either already in custody or have been convicted. Essentially, Antifa Ost has been dismantled. It's been dismantled. The other ones, not really a threat like that. Not really a threat. European governments have already declined to label Antifa a terrorist organization themselves. Any iteration of it in any country in Europe, it has been declined to designate them as a terrorist organization. Not one nation has them as terrorists. Not one. Just us. Just us. We're the only one. I do want to back end this with just a couple updates real quick. Now that I have sufficiently scared the crap out of you once again, I just want to hip you to a couple things that came down the pike on election, because they're weaponizing terrorism in so many ways. The term, the idea of it is being weaponized. And now it's stretching to our elections, because the Trump administration is threatening tens of millions of dollars to blue states that fund their federal terrorism prevention. That's right. Okay. So they're threatening them. They're threatening states. They're saying states need to transition to paper ballots and our SAVE system of verification of voters and a few other changes. If you don't, we will withhold federal grants aimed at stopping terrorism at election sites. You heard me. They are going to withdraw terrorism-related funding, anti-terrorism related funding, if states don't get on board with their election tampering. About $1 billion a year is afforded to these election boards in anti-terrorism funds to secure our election from foreign terrorism, domestic terrorism, violent terrorism. Our government gives our states this money to prevent these terrorist acts. They're going to withdraw it. This money goes to physical barriers at election sites, security measures, planning and drill exercises, as well as cyber security protections. There it is. They're going to draw back the money that funds our cybersecurity efforts. Okay, I'm seeing it. Now I'm seeing it. They want to make our elections less secure. So, in the event that a, more likely attack now, more likely successful attack happens to one of our elections in one of our states, they can then point to that election and say, look, it was fraudulent. There was a foreign terrorist effort to interfere in our elections. Why? Because we withdrew the funds to stop it. We withdraw the funding to stop it. And when it happens, or even if it doesn't happen, we, the administration, can point to all the holes that we poked in your security to claim interference. And what's crazy is the stuff they're asking for is already implemented. They're saying they want election boards. They want elections to solely rely on hand-marked paper ballots. No more barcodes or QR codes, hand-marked paper ballots. And they want audits on 5% of all ballots turned in, automatic audits, to look for election fraud. Okay, well, switching to all hand-marked paper ballots will cost hundreds of millions of dollars to implement. They'll have to buy new machines. And so even though they can make the marks for your selection hand-marked paper, they still have to use hand ballot counting to count it and tabulate it. It's completely moot and ineffectual. Also, the 5% of ballots audited, anytime there's a close election, they already audit all the ballots in a recount. The 5% that they want audited wouldn't even cover a recount audit. Completely ineffectual, just pressure, knowing that blue states won't capitulate. And when they don't, we take away your anti-terrorism funding to make your elections less secure, so we can point out how unsecure your elections were and there was fraud when we get our ass kicked in November. What else are they doing? And I'm going to leave you with this. They are threatening. So a letter came down. They are threatening. This went to top election officials across the country. And it came down from Harmeet Dillon, of all people. I mentioned her earlier, the Civil Rights Division leader in the DOJ. Harmeet Dillon sent an additional demand, another letter. This one was a threat to all top election officials in the country. This threat went like this. Hand over all of your voter rolls now and let us run them through the SAVE system. They keep going back to this DHS SAVE system so they can purge voter rolls. This SAVE system has been proven to be inaccurate time and time again. They want to kick off real voters in the guise of protecting our elections from fraudulent voters. They want to purge. So Harmeet Dillon sent this letter to top election officials across the country saying, if you don't put your voter rolls through our SAVE system, and on election day, we find even one non-citizen voter voting in your election, you're going to jail. You're going to jail for maybe 5 years. Just one. That's right. Just one. Clear intimidation. Now, a lot of these top election officials are saying, we see this as a bullying tactic. We're not convinced. We're not scared. We're not going to hand over our voter rolls. We already told you that. You've been demanding we hand them over, and when we said no, you sued us. You're losing all those lawsuits. Now you're going through all these different tactics, all these gymnastics to get our voter rolls. You mandated that our mail system not pick up mail-in ballots if we don't put our voter rolls through your SAVE system. Now you're threatening to take away anti-terrorist funding if we don't adhere to your SAVE system. And finally, we're threatening you with jail time should you not give us your voter rolls. If you don't, and even one non-citizen votes in your election, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. Some legal experts are saying this doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, like a lot of his election policy lately, because simply, and we keep circling back to this, the government, the federal government the executive office has no role in elections. Elections are administered by the states. It's in our Constitution. And it is this basis that all of his attempts are getting shot down one by one, court by court, judge by judge. And legal experts are saying, we think that this will get shot down as well. Top election officials in each state are saying, we're not intimidated, we're not bullied, we're not going to hand them over. We hope they can't do this. But that is what they're threatening. From on high, Harmeet Dillon herself. One non-citizen votes in your election, you're going to jail. We'll see who's intimidated by this and who's not. Hopefully it's nobody. Hopefully it doesn't stand. But the assault on our elections continue. The weaponization of the word terrorist continues on all levels. I'll see you kids Tuesday.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break.